Welcome to the Friday Shoot-Around, your K-State basketball show, presented by Booth Creek Wagyu. Now let's go to the Flint Hills, home of GPC's hidden studio. Here's your host, Ryan Gilbert.
Welcome in here to the Friday Shoot-Around. I am Ryan Gilbert. He is Clint Stewart. Kansas State coming off of an impressive overtime victory over Baylor on Tuesday. Jerome Tang's Wildcats are now 10-0 going back to last year in overtime games. We're going to break down that one, but we'll also talk about Kansas State's loss to Texas Tech from Saturday, what went wrong there, what went right against Baylor. We'll take a peek ahead and look at Oklahoma State coming up on Saturday, as well as Iowa State coming up early next week. Clint, before we do that, a quick message from our sponsor, Booth Creek Wagyu. Remember to elevate your tailgate with our friends from Booth Creek Wagyu. Their ranch is located just north of Manhattan. Proudly raises authentic Wagyu from farm to table. Visit their retail locations in Overland Park and Manhattan or online at boothcreekwagyu.com. I'm going to be honest, I forgot about that read and just now entered my mind. So I didn't read the script. That was all memory. Hope I did good. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure you're hitting subscribe, like, comment. Let us know how we're doing. Clint, it was brought to my attention that I address you as former Wildcat, but I think the right way is maybe former player, because you're always a Wildcat, right, man?
That's right, Ema for life. And I'm impressed by your memory there on the advertisement that's been sponsored. So it's pretty good, man. It's you're pretty.
I can do something
sharp
right,
dude.
I guess. Yeah. Man, let's dive right into it. I know that we'll talk about Texas Tech here in a moment, but I think fans really want to hear about Baylor in this game. K-State, like I said, 10-0 now in overtime games under Jerome Tang. And Jerome Tang was asked about it after the game. What's the key to continue to win these games? And 5 to grind is what he said. I'm curious, do you even know what that is as a coach? Is this something that you practice with your team? And how important can this 5 to grind drill be in practice to let that show in games?
Yeah, I mean, and so I had a luxury of hitting up Coach Perry and asking him about that, and 5 to grind for Kansas State is at the end of practice, 5 minutes on the clock, and just working execution. They put score up on the scoreboard and execution, offensively, defensively, the last 5 minutes of a game. And as you can see, I think it's really helped the Wildcats over the last 2 years under Coach Tang, executing down the stretch and figure out ways to go win when it gets into overtime and where every single possession is just maximized, and so it's really boded them well. And it's something that I think, I even myself as a coach, once I got the details on them, like we need to probably do some of that as well. And I think it's really good for our Wildcats, and we're seeing that down the stretch of games and how we can close out, games. Obviously didn't go as well as we wanted to against Texas Tech, but we'll count that one as an anomaly. And, we've been doing really good down the stretch of games.
Obviously the X's and O's and in practice, that sorts of stuff, I think K-State staff obviously has an advantage with that 5 to grind, but just the confidence that Jerome Tang and his whole crew instill on all their players, that's tangible, right? They know they're going to go into overtime and win this game, simply because they've been there and done that. Clint, I think a lot of the stuff that, we're going to talk about here with winning in overtime, it's nothing different than what we said when K-State had won 3 overtime games in a row in late November, early December. It's just, we can win these games. We've been here before. Let's just go out for another 5 minutes and win and get one more point than the opponent.
It's all experience, and the coaching staff has experience in it, which gives the players confidence in what the coaches are telling them to do. And now they're getting the experience, obviously in it as well. And when you have that experience, you get into those situations, it's something you've done before. You're confident in your abilities to go out there and finish the job. And so I think it's huge for our team. And when we talk about experience, not just the game experience, we have 5 different overtimes, but as we mentioned, the 5 to grind in practice and working that every single day is gaining that experience in that kind of situation, where how detailed you have to be to execute down the stretch, how important every single possession is. And so when you get in the game, it's like, we've done this, we've been here before, we know what we need to do, and let's go out and let's go do it. And so it's been good, and obviously it's worked out well.
Arthur Kaluma was the hero in overtime. How big was that shot against Baylor?
Oh, it was insane, right? And as he was shooting it, I think I probably was yelling at the screen, "No!" And it goes in and one, yes! I was just so
right?
excited. And he stepped up big. And, I think he only shot the ball maybe 9 times in the game. And he's been shooting the ball well. And I like for him to shoot it even a few more times, but that shot, in overtime, the and 1-3, couldn't have, that's not something you draw up. That's just something that happens by players making plays. And he made a great play and obviously got us to win.
I agree, man. I think that Kaluma needs to be more of a volume scorer. Tyler Perry has taken more than 2 times more three-point attempts than Kaluma, and I'm not having a problem with Perry shooting the ball. I think he maybe could get some smarter looks throughout games, but Kaluma needs to be a guy to take more shots. But at the same time, that doesn't mean he needs to start forcing things. Kaluma's doing an excellent job right now of taking smart shots and not forcing things. So is it really a challenge, especially when you've got a guy like Kaluma who has maybe a slower release? Is it a challenge to try to get more looks? Because mentally you don't want to try to start forcing things, and that's when you start to get those misses. But Kaluma is, in terms of 3-point percentage, the number 1 3-point shooter on this team.
Yeah, and I think he's been taking good shots. I thought honestly early on in the season, I thought he forced some, but lately he's been really playing to smart shots and then taking some really good ones. But I'd like to see him shoot more, and not only from the outside, but even driving the basketball. Getting to the rim. He's really crafty with his footwork, as you see, kind of around the rim, fadeaways and things. And so for him just to look to those opportunities, I think can really help us as a team. When we talk about our 3-headed monster and scoring the basketball with Tyler and Cam and obviously Arthur. I think Kaluma is one that he's physical enough, he's big enough to be able to drive the basketball, get in there and get fouled even more, get to the free throw line to really help us out in scoring the basketball.
Early on in the season, Jerome Tang said that Arthur Kaluma needed to buy in, and I think we talked about this on the show, and a lot of us were just confused. What does this mean? I think we learned that Kaluma bought into his role as being more of a team player rather than trying to force things. And I don't think Kaluma was trying to be a superstar on his own. It's all about me. I think that he was just trying to do too much. And so, yeah, Clint, Jerome Tang, everybody's started to see him let the game come to him and be more of a scorer when he's not forcing things. Early on in the year, I think that might have been part of the problem with him trying to do too much. But that shot in overtime from Kaluma, we don't get that opportunity if RJ Jones, the true freshman, the unlikely source, comes in off the bench and hits probably the biggest three-pointer of his whole life. K-State doesn't have a chance for that win if Jones doesn't make that one right before Kaluma's.
Yeah, and Tang spoke about RJ and also Colbert and the maturity, and I think not only for those two, I think he's also speaking about Kaluma, right? The maturity that they've gained over the season, just kind of maturing into their role, understanding it's about the team, understanding that for us to do what we want to do and be able to win basketball games, everybody has to buy into their role. Everybody has to lock into the game plan. Everybody has to try to go out and execute to the best of their ability. And it takes the entire team to do that, and so the guys have to be ready when their number is called, and I thought RJ obviously stepping in at a big moment. Cam Carter fouls out of the game, and RJ, when he shot it, it looked, there was no hesitation. He didn't second guess himself. He was open, he shot it, it goes in, big shot for us. And it's good to see just those guys taking steps and maturing as the season's going on and just being ready for when their number's called. And all that preparation, that all goes into practice, right? What are you doing in practice to prepare yourself for that moment? So when you get that opportunity in the game, you're ready to step up and you're ready to make plays. And so it's good to see RJ do that.
Players like RJ, along with Colbert, going on to scout team in practice. That just kind of says all you need to know about the way that this team collectively is bought in to win games. It's not about what can I do for myself, my NBA draft stock, or my points per game. Only thing that matters for this team is winning. And with Jones and Colbert going on to scout team, you don't get that often. But K-State doesn't have as many GAs that can go out and hoop. They only have one walk-on, and so they're a little short-handed. So they kind of need those guys on scout team. But to have guys like Jones and Colbert step up, it's huge. And they're winning these games, and I think that's what Jerome Tang wants to see. These guys doing what they can to help the team, not necessarily themselves.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand the way kind of scout team works. And I talked to, I have some younger guys on our high school team, sophomores, and for scout team, the fun thing about being on scout team is usually you're, the other players, best players, and you have freedom, right? And so that freedom gives you confidence that you can step up and make shots because, hey, if you're playing scout team and you're Joe Toussaint from Texas Tech, hey, guess what? We want you driving the basketball. We want you being aggressive all the time, right? We want you trying to score the basketball. Oh, cool. Let's go. And so it gives those guys that freedom. And then they gain confidence in what they can do, and I think that plays well for when they get the opportunity in the game. They just have confidence. Obviously you have to rein some things back because you're Joe Toussaint and Scout, but you're not going to be Joe Toussaint on our team when we're trying to go win a basketball game. But they gain that confidence in themselves that, hey, I can make shots, I can score the basketball, I can do what coach is asking me to do. And so guess what? It's time for me to step up and make a big shot. I've already done it on scout team as we were preparing for Baylor and RJ Jones had to play, Jaden Nunn. Okay, cool. I'm ready to step up and shoot the ball because that's what I had to do the whole week, right? And so, and I think it bodes well for the whole team, and then it helps us out in the big games.
Dorian Finister, how much has he continued to just grow here in Big 12 play as a reliable candidate to be maybe an X factor on this team?
Yeah, 5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, about 20 minutes played. Just comes out, does what he needs to do. And when you look at his stat line and you see 0 turnovers, I think that's the biggest key. So he's out there taking care of the basketball. And so if you can take care of the basketball, any coach, you can take care of the basketball and you can defend, you can get on the floor, and so I think you're seeing him just fill into a nice role. He had a nice alley-oop from Cam Carter, and he had one as well against Texas Tech alley-oop. He laid the one up against Texas Tech. He dunked the one on Baylor. So I guess maybe we got to tell him, hey, every time you get that alley-oop, we need you to dunk it. That way we know we're going to win the game. So that's the only difference in the 2 games.
With Texas Tech, I hate to revisit this, but we've got to talk about it a little bit. K-State, in my opinion, really that slow start, the awful start down in Lubbock is really what lost them the game. They dug themselves a hole that was really tough to dig out of, and they dug out of it, had a double-digit lead at halftime. But in the back of my mind, I just kind of felt this is going to come back to bite them. Sure enough, it did. They cooled off after Tyler Perry, caught fire in the first half, and 18 turnovers, Clint, is not going to win you many games. And in fact, K-State has never won a game under Jerome Tang. 0-6 now when it commits more than 18 turnovers in the Big 12. And so just a sloppy game, but that's a frustrating one when you had it right there and you lose it by 1. Those are the games that you have to steal on the road in the Big 12. K-State couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it was a big game for us. On the road, had the opportunity to win, and one that I'm sure we'll look back and say we should have won, especially when you look at down the stretch, 5 minutes or so up, 55-46, with an opportunity to go win the basketball game. There are a couple big key plays in that game. One was free throw situation, and they're shooting a free throw. The game is 57-52 with about 2.5 left. They missed the free throw, get the rebound, offensive rebound, put back and one. With 2.5 minutes, I thought that was a key play in the game where if we get that rebound, up 5 with the ball, 2.5, I feel pretty good for about, where we're at. Another one is Toussaint came down and his and one at the end of the game. If you watch it, he stride stops, which is a right-left stride stop. So his right puts his pivot foot. He pumps 3 or 4 times, and he steps through with his right. I'm like, that's a travel. Unfortunately, it's not called. It was a foul, but there was a travel before the foul, and then that's just kind of how things kind of played out. But if that's called a travel there, and he doesn't get the N1, we're still winning the game with the ball, and they're going to have to foul us, And so 2 big plays, but I think we had our opportunities down the stretch, and we just didn't execute to the best that we could have and didn't get the stops that we needed. And it's a learning opportunity for us, and unfortunately got away from us on the road, and one that I think we feel like, man, if we had a few possessions back, we win that basketball game.
You're a coach. What's the art, the science of working the officials, especially when they blatantly miss a call like that with Toussaint traveling, and not just one call here, but over the course of a game? How do you get your message across that this isn't being treated fairly? And I'm not saying the officials were completely for Texas Tech that entire game, but that specific call was huge and played a big part in K-State losing that game.
Yeah, and it's tough because it's always kind of a feel game when it comes to the refs because, you also don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to hurt the team with maybe a technical foul, in the wrong part of the game, especially there, there at the end of the game, I know Tang knows I can't get a technical foul here at the end of the game. I could obviously change the outcome of the game, but throughout the game, you're just trying to make sure that everything is called, fairly, right? I mean, and that's the biggest thing we want as coaches. If you're going to call touch fouls on one side of the floor, call on the other, right? If you're going to call travels on this side, call on the other. And as long as they can be fair and consistent across the board, then we can have the players adjust to how they're calling the game. And so it gets pretty tough when you don't feel like it's consistent and you're trying to just figure out the flow of the game, what calls are going to be called and which ones are not, and why are they calling this one versus not calling it on the other side of the floor. Then it can be tough. And then, as a coach, you just have to make sure that you continue to iterate that to the refs. And hey, we want it to be consistent. We want great foul call. I love it. Call the same thing down here, And so as long as they're consistent, then we can live with it.
We'll wrap up this Texas Tech game. I'll ask you this question, Clint. The final possession, Tyler Perry, not much was going on, and so Tang calls a timeout. Perry was just kind of dribbling around, and I like the timeout from Tang. Try to draw something up. They come out of that timeout, and it's just Perry going to the hoop. Now, I like Perry going downhill, to use his body, to try to draw, contact and get that foul called. I'm not trying to bring officiating in this, but to try to get a foul call, I like that. But at the same time, with this staff that Jerome Tang has put together, and how many times we have seen them give their team, 2 free points out of a timeout. Were you a fan of that call to just have someone going downhill, or would you like to see somebody, get schemed up a little bit better for an open look?
Yeah, and it's tough because Perry is a guy that's shown that he can make big shots in big time moments, and so obviously you want the basketball in his hand, and try to get him, going downhill. I know he had a snatch back, and kind of pull back, and that's one that he hit against Villanova, which was a big shot, and I think Texas Tech did a good job of defending him in the snatch back, and then he tried to kind of drive it, get into the lane, and get fouled as he shot kind of a fadeaway. But it's really kind of you just got to kind of fill it out. I think, we wanted the ball in his hands at that point in time. And obviously he's a playmaker for us. I think probably another option would have been, could we have got something with Kaluma being a bigger guard, maybe inside, that maybe could have voted us well as well. But also when you think about Tyler, it's like, man, if he gets fouled, it's almost automatic from the free throw line, right? And so you get him going downhill and Texas Tech doesn't do a good job and he's able to get to the free throw line, then hey, these are going in, and so I like the call, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out for us.
At the end of the day, K-State is 3-1 right now, especially these last 2 games. You go 1-1 on the road against a team that was unbeaten at the time in Big 12 play, and then a top 10 team at home. You get one of those 2, you're 3-1. You would have loved to have stolen that one on the road at Texas Tech. That would have been awesome. But all things considered, to be 3-1 right now is okay, and you're in a good spot if you're Jerome Tang. Coming into the year, could ask you, Clint, K-State, especially after that USC loss, to open up the season, or the way things went against Miami, to be 3-1. If I would have told you, this team's going to be 3-1 after 4 games, you would gladly take that, right?
Oh yeah, it's great. It'd much rather be 3-1 than 1-3 or 0-3. And so 3-1, sitting in a good place too. Going in this weekend, at home against Oklahoma State, Legends game. Have a lot of alumni back. And Oklahoma State's been obviously struggling, haven't won in the Big 12. What you hope is we don't have just kind of a mental lapse. Coming off of a big win at home against Baylor. You can't relax and just think, oh, okay, we're just going to come in and they're going to lay down. No, they're going to fight. Boynton's going to have those guys ready to play, and they're going to come in trying to steal one and get their first Big 12 win. And so we just got to come out with the right mindset and understand that it's one day at a time. And as Tang and his staff always says, what's next? All right, what's next? Well, next is Oklahoma State, and we got to go with the right approach and protect our home and our home court to get the win.
We'll break down that game here in just a moment, but first, a quick break here on the Friday Shoot Around.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Welcome back in here to the Friday Shoot Around. I am Ryan Gilbert. He is Clint Stewart, K-State, looking to go 4-1 in Big 12 play on Saturday against Oklahoma State. Among those in attendance is going to be 2025 Hoops prospect King Grace. And Clint, I bring this up. David Castillo was in attendance on Tuesday against Baylor. I know I texted with him. You texted with him. For obviously Castillo signed. He's 100% bought in on K-State hoops. But for a guy that's not, who's just a recruit, how important can that atmosphere be inside of the Octagon of Doom for a guy to be like, wow, let alone the coaching staff or whatever you're looking for as a recruit. You see that electric atmosphere in Bramwich Coliseum, you might be giving K-State a closer look.
Oh yeah, for sure. And as a recruit coming in, when you get in that the Octagon of Doom and it's booming and popping as it was on Tuesday night against Baylor, it gives you a feel and a sense of home. Like you're just like, man, I want to play in front of this, and so it's big for our community and our fans to show up and let him know that this is what it's like. If you come here, we're going to support you. We're going to be cheering for you. We're going to have your back. You're part of the family, and it's a fun place to be. One of the things that David Castillo texted me after the game, he said, Coach, he's like, it was crazy. Like, I didn't know it was this insane, and just how loud it was, and then the hype. And I said, yeah, that's K-State, and I'm looking forward to you playing in front of that insane crowd starting next year, And he said, you already know, and you're going to be there watching me. I said, that's right. So it's a fun place, and I think for any recruit coming in, when I see just the atmosphere, and then you couple that with the team and then the chemistry and the coaching staff and what they're doing, and not only just basketball wise, but the life lessons that are being taught. It's just a place that hopefully, as a recruit comes in, says, yes, this is where I want to be.
With Oklahoma State, I mean, you touched on it a moment ago, but this is not a very good basketball team right now. But K-State did have that game against West Virginia, kind of that same sort of team that is underperforming. You got to lock in and night out. After every win, you mentioned it. What's next? Well, Oklahoma State is what's next. And so is there any I guess, concern from you that K-State might be looking ahead to that bigger matchup next week against Iowa State?
There's always concern and trying to keep the guys locked into one game at a time, and it's something that it's easy to say. It's a little bit harder to do at times, especially when you might have an opponent that hasn't been playing well, and one that if you look on paper, we should beat, some might say in an easy game. But one thing about the Big 12 is no game is easy, and any given night, any team can beat any team. And so the thing we have playing to our advantage is we're at home, and so hopefully we can feed off of our crowd to get going early, and hopefully our crowd can help cause some disruption in Oklahoma State players and their play calls and what they're trying to do. And I think that can obviously help us in a game, that hopefully we can limit any kind of distraction of looking ahead and take care of the business that's right in front of us. So should be a good game. It'll be fun having alumni back, obviously there in Bramlage, and I'm sure the team is ready to show out.
Coming up next week against Iowa State on the road. I mean, that's a team that's 2-0 at home in Big 12 play, 0-2 on the road. And so, Hilton, I'm curious, like your perspective when you were a player, was it like how it was now, how tough it is to play and how Hilton Magic gets going? But more importantly, how challenging is that going to be? We saw them beat Houston at home, and we know Houston's a pretty darn good team. We could break down Houston next week because K-State plays them a week from Saturday. And so overall, man, Iowa State, this is not going to be a walk in the park for this team.
It's not, and no disrespect to Iowa and Iowa State, but I didn't like traveling. It's not a fun place to go travel up to, and then obviously having to go play in front of the Hilton Magic. But they have a great crowd as well, and they play well at home. They've always been that way, even from when I played, many moons ago. It was about 15 years ago, and so for us, we got to be locked in. We're gonna have to execute. It can get loud in there, and so you really got to rely on the team and then the guys and our leaders leading us, especially when we're on the opposite end of the floor trying to run offense. And guys all have to be locked in, because they have traditionally have played better at home than what they have on the road. And for us, if we can win on Saturday and then, feel good about where we're at and then go in and win on the road at Iowa State, we'll be sitting at 5-1 in the Big 12. And I think Tang kind of mentioned it. We need to get to 8 or 9 wins, for the NCAA tournament. And so I think that'll put us in a good position, as we go down the stretch and we start playing some of the upper echelon teams in the Big 12.
So you mentioned I was going to bring this up with Tang, 8 or 9 wins. That's where they want to be entering Big 12 play. I felt like that was kind of just the overall hope and expectation that you can win that certain number of games, get you into the NCAA tournament, and kind of just see what happens from there. Now, especially when you watch Tang's press conferences and just be around this team a little bit, K-State, Jerome Tang, his whole staff, all the players, they feel like, okay, now we can start competing for the top half of the Big 12. Try to gain an advantage in March Madness by getting like a 5 or a 6 or 7 seed. I'm not saying, K-State doesn't have the firepower to get up to that 3 seed line like it was last season, but I think over these 4 games in conference play, the bar has been raised after the way K-State has played and is 1 point away from being 4-0 right now.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of gained some confidence and things, which is really good. And our team were playing really well, and we kind of mentioned it early on. We said we had some close games against some opponents that maybe you'd say, oh, we should blow them out, but at the same time we're learning, and we have a bunch of new guys kind of meshing together, and I think we're starting to see them fill into their roles. And then as a coaching staff, Coach Tang and staff, they like what they're seeing now and said, hey, the guys are finally starting to fall into what we need them to do and understanding what they can do to help the team win and be successful. And anytime you do that, then you have a chance every single time out. And so I think we've put ourselves in a position now where we're feeling really good about where we're at, but you got to continue to get better, continue to push forward because as good as we are right now at 3-1, in the midst of a week or two, you can lose 3 or 4 games in a row, and all of a sudden it looks like a totally different season. And so just got to continue to get better at it. And like I said, at the end of the day, if we focus on the 1-0 every single day, not only in the games but in practices, 1-0 today in practice, that means we're getting better. And we're going to put ourselves in a position to obviously move up that seed line when it comes to the NCAA tournament.
How important is rebounding going to be for this team? It was not pretty against Baylor, and K-State was able to squeak out of there with the win. So we always talk about turnovers or this or that. This guy's got to be better shooting, rebounding just in general. And I think this is maybe a challenge to David Gasson and Will McNair down low in the paint. How important is this going to be for K-State?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us. I think Baylor is only the 5th game all season that we got out rebounded. The biggest thing there was, Baylor had 23 offensive rebounds, and we can't give up offensive rebounds to the opponents in the Big 12, And so you can almost look at that and say we kind of snuck that one out by giving up 23 offensive rebounds. But that's almost unheard of or insane or absurd, And I'm sure from a coaching staff perspective, I know they've kind of talked about that with the players this week and preparing for Oklahoma State. We've got to do a better job on the glass, and we've been doing a good job on the glass, But I think just got to continue that focus on it, and then for us, we would like to get second chance opportunities as we're a pretty good offensive rebounding team. And so those second chance opportunities for us will be big, especially when we don't shoot the ball at a high clip, and then I think, just getting those extra shots up at the rim and hopefully getting fouled, especially if you're trying to get putbacks, getting to the free throw line, I think is really big. And, when you talk about tight games, it comes down to free throws, turnovers, rebounds, and so those are going to be big for us as we move on.
Assuming K-State can make it into March Madness, when that time does come, what do you envision Jerome Colbert's role being? Or is he even going to see the court at all? I'm not saying that he needs to be a guy to play 20 minutes a game. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think he's more of a role player at this point in his career. But to go in and be a rim protector, maybe grab a few rebounds and help out Gasson and McNair, is that okay? Is that all you maybe want from a guy like Jerome Colbert? Right? Not right now, but I guess I asked you in March Madness when it really starts to matter. Where do you see Colbert being 2 months from now?
Yeah, I think it's all matchup based, but for him, he has to continue just getting better every day. So when his number's called, he's ready to play. But I think as we look at the matchups, when you get into March Madness and NCAA tournament, more than likely you're going to be playing against teams you haven't played against all year and haven't seen. And so, there's going to be some teams that have a bigger lineup where we're going to say, hey, we're going to need Colbert to play, a bigger amount of minutes, because of their strength and physicality inside, or it might be a team that might be, smaller with all guards. And so he might not get on the floor as much just because of the matchups and what we need to be able to defend, 4 or 5 guards out on the floor. But he has to stay ready, when his number's called and he's ready to go in and ready to contribute. I think he can do some really good things for us with his size and protecting the rim and giving Will McNair some some breathers that are going to be needed. As Tang mentioned, we can't rely on him playing 36, 37 minutes. And so for him to play his best, he probably needs to play, about 30 minutes a game or so or less. And so Colbert just has to be ready to come in and contribute when that number's called.
Not just with Will McNair, but you don't want Tyler Perry or Cam Carter, Kaluma. You don't want these guys to be on the court for 38 minutes a game, especially when you add in the fact that K-State has a knack for playing in overtime, and that's an extra 5 minutes that's going to start to add up on your body mentally, physically, all that stuff. So it's going to be real important for these guys, not only Colbert, but Jones and Finister, and Ames is going to come back on Saturday, we think, from his ankle injury. Michaela Bridge, maybe his number is going to be called at some point. There's only so much that these superstars can do, and so that's why this bench, it's so important for them to continue to gain trust from Jerome Tang that, I can look at the bench and point at you and say, hey, you're going in the game. I can trust you. You're going to do a good job. I don't have to worry about, are you going to turn it over? Are you going to take a bad shot? Are you going to be nervous? I think that's key is just these players continuing to gain trust from Jerome Tang.
Yeah, it is. And those guys coming off the bench, it's literally, you look at RJ Jones, he played 5 minutes the last game. It's literally in those 5 minutes, can you give me everything you have positively on the floor to impact the game? And sometimes that impact the game, it might not be scoring. Like that impact the game is going out there, defending, talking, communicating, rebounding the basketball, or not letting your guy, get offensive rebounds. But how can you impact the game in whatever amount of minutes that you get, and understand as a player, like that is your job, And so, for these guys like RJ, like Michaela Bridge, Day, getting him back, it's, we're not going to be relying on them to play heavy minutes, but what we need them to do is come in and be ready to impact the game. And then you never know how the game might go, right? You might have some guys in foul trouble, or you might come in and play really well, and the coach says, hey, guess what? Instead of that 5-6 minutes, we want you to play 12, 13, and that's kind of what happened with Dorian, right? He started just playing well, and coach was like, okay, well, let's bump those minutes up, and now he's up to about 20 minutes, and really helping us out. And so just got to be ready to impact the game in whatever way they can, positively, and hopefully when they get in there, they can do that.
Clint, we'll wrap it up with this, and we don't do many predictions here on the show. Maybe we should start doing this. K-State against Oklahoma State, and then Iowa State as well. What are you thinking here? Can they go 2-0, or maybe a slip up on the road against Iowa State?
Yeah, I like our chances here at home against Oklahoma State. As long as we come out with the right mindset, I think we should pull out the win and then have a good weekend, which is really nice. And then going up to Iowa State, I think is going to be a tough one. I think we're going to have to play really well. We're going to shoot the ball a little bit better than what we did even against Baylor. We didn't shoot the ball particularly well from three. We were 7 for 23. I think we're going to have to make some shots. We shot it well against Tech, but we're going to have to make some shots, limit our turnovers, and then we're going to really have to defend, because it feels like Iowa State shoots the ball better at home as well. So really have to defend. And we'll have a shot to win that game as well, but it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take everybody locked in to go and get a win on the road, which is always hard.
All right, Clint, appreciate you as always, man. We'll be back here next Friday breaking down these two games from Kansas State. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, man, go PowerCat. We're doing a lot on this YouTube channel. Brian Hanley just launched his daily show earlier this week, The Big Insiders. I know I'm going to be a part of that moving forward, Clint. Maybe we can get you on there at some point as well. But it's never been a better time to be a K-State fan, not only with hoops, but with football as well. Everything's been going well with K-State sports. So be sure you're subscribing here on Go PowerCats YouTube channel. If not, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, wherever that may be, I don't know how it works. You give us a thumbs up or a 5-star. It always helps us grow. But Clint, we'll talk to you next week, man. Appreciate your time. And once again, K-State 3-1 right now in Big 12 play. We'll break down the next two games next week on the Friday Shoot Around.
All right. Appreciate it. Go Cats.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.